Hi, parents. Hi, students. My name is Gregory Pence. I'll be leading the Shakespeare Seminar at Makers Academy this March. I want to provide you with a PowerPoint presentation to answer any questions you may have about me or the class. Now, the Shakespeare Seminar is part of the Junior English programming at Makers Academy. I hope you stay tuned. We will have a number of options available in the future. And I've really enjoyed working with Makers. The staff there works hard to make sure that the classes are not only entertaining, but educationally rigorous. A little bit about me. So I attended Dartmouth College, an Ivy League school based in Hanover, New Hampshire. There I studied political science. Before I went to Dartmouth, I attended St. Paul's School, a fully residential boarding school I compared to Harry Potter's Hogwarts. My experience there, a lot of it is going to inform this class, and we'll talk more about that later. You should know that I came to Korea initially as a Fulbright scholar, affiliated with Yonsei University. There I was studying nationalism, protest art, and propaganda. Before I began my teaching and tutoring career, I've been teaching and tutoring for more than 10 years, a range of classes from SAT to AP material, from novel reading to ESL, working with executives at major companies, working with young children. I really benefited from this experience, and I hope that I've brought a bit of my passion and excitement about education into the lives of the students I've worked with. And I really take seriously parents entrusting me with their students, with their children. As a parent myself, I understand how very, very special that is. And I really look forward to working with your kids. So the big question is why Shakespeare? This is a poet who wrote many hundreds of years ago. We're moving into the age of artificial intelligence. Doesn't it seem a bit irrelevant or outdated? Is this going to help me in high school or in college? Is this going to help my son be better at writing and reading and speaking? The answer to all those questions is generally yeah. Shakespeare is still incredibly relevant, and he will, in his poetry and prose, make you a better reader and writer. So, back to the question, why Shakespeare? Just speaking practically. Well, Shakespeare still, to this day, is required coursework for high school English and humanities classes. Students, if they are taking these classes, will not be able to dodge Shakespeare. And even if they were not taking these classes, they will find Shakespeare on SAT tests, on AP tests. He finds his way into our lives even when we may not want him to. And this poses an issue for a number of students who struggle with Shakespeare. And they struggle with Shakespeare for a variety of very legitimate reasons. Shakespeare's writing includes complex themes, characterization, and plot. He has layered rhetorical devices, and he includes archaic English that may be for both native and non-English speakers really hard to understand. And another, and maybe the most important point about why Shakespeare is that great writers are great readers. If we want to be great writers, we need to actually take time to look at, to read, to analyze great writing. And I am hard pressed to name a writer of Shakespeare's caliber, although there are many wonderful and incredible English writers, of course. But perhaps no other person in the history of the English language has had such a great influence on the development of the language, on the writing, and also on the content of narratives and the types of characters we see both in the books today and the movies we watch. So our course will be truncated, obviously, for spring, and we will be covering three particular plays: Macbeth, which is a drama, Twelfth Night, a comedy, Hamlet, a drama. So I really wanted to make sure my students were exposed to both drama and comedy. being able to identify different techniques used in these plays, both to elicit, a laugh or to really, pull on the heartstrings. Being able to discern tone, which Shakespeare applies readily to drama and comedy. Being able to discern tone is actually a very, very important part of AP and SAT test taking and also high school writing. Now, the course syllabus has these books appearing in this order because Macbeth is a more intermediate text compared to Hamlet, which is a bit more advanced. And so I wanted to make sure that we encouraged our students, we gave them, opportunity to kind of, um, you know, acclimate to Shakespeare before moving into the more advanced material. Now, of course, the class will not just focus entirely on these three plays, although they form the foundation of the class itself. There will be supplementary material, and this will include literary analysis from renowned critics like Harold Bloom. They will include passages from historical textbooks, providing context for the reading that we're doing in class, helping us to understand what historical forces are at play in the different plays that we review and read. Of course, Macbeth, this is a text that, occurs before Shakespeare's time. And, Hamlet in its own way is timeless. But we're going to look at, again, a world on the brink of pretty dramatic change during Shakespeare's lifetime, as we are seeing the influences of the Renaissance in his writing. We're seeing the transition from medieval to modern, as it were. And so Shakespeare is such a wonderful kind of writer and he has such a great foundation of material to kind of assess these different historical influences. And finally, we'll look at modern day adaptations of Shakespeare, looking at how his works connect to us still today. And there have been many successful modern day adaptations of Shakespeare, each one with its own unique flavor and emphasizing or highlighting, a disparate theme. Now, the course structure will be a 3-hour class. The first hour class will focus on a close reading of key scenes and themes. I am planning on us completing one act per day. So that will mean students will have to follow the reading closely, but the reading should not be overwhelming. An act in Shakespeare can range from 3 scenes to usually at most 6 or 7. It is not designed to be overwhelming so that students can reread the material. So I am really trying to encourage, again, active reading. Okay? Active reading, not passive reading, active reading. It's very important that our students annotate the text, that they highlight, that they define words that they do not know, that they make notes in a binder if they find themselves making connections that they had not yet or had not done earlier. So again, this will be active reading and it will provide opportunities for students to reread material if they had problems with it the first time over. The second hour class will be guided discussion. Now, this is actually informed by my experience at St. Paul's School. The Harkness method really seeks to engage students, to bring them into the material, to have them share their own opinions, their own experiences, to really create synergy in the class so that we are not just a lecture-based class. We're not a class that is merely repeating and regurgitating the literary criticism and analysis that's already been done, but we are building on it. We are building on the shoulder of the greats to be great ourselves and come up with ideas and really, again, encourage creative thinking, encourage, reasonable and rational analysis, And so I think that this is a very critical part of the class, and it will very much require students to be fully participatory in the class and be prepared for the class. And I'm very excited about it. Now, the third hour class is an analytical writing workshop. In this, during this part of the class, we will not just discuss in Shakespeare the what and the how, but we will also discuss the why. Why did Shakespeare choose to write what he wrote? And this perhaps is the single most significant vulnerability, to use the word, vulnerability for students, across my decade plus of teaching. A number of students I've worked with, highly intelligent students, eager, excited about the material. A recurring problem for these students is analysis, is answering the question, why? And I really want that this class not only answer the question why in guided discussion, but that our students are answering the question why in their writing. So I thought I'd provide you with an example from Henry V, one of my favorites. So this play was written in the middle period of Shakespeare's career. And I thought we'd focus on a speech here, part of a speech. This is famously referred to as the Agincourt speech. And Henry V, he is the King of England. Just to provide you with a bit of context, he's the King of England. He has been leading an attack on the French for a number of weeks. And throughout this campaign, he has been the witness to betrayal and hardship. And so a great battle awaits Henry and the soldiers who are still alive at Agincourt, a field not so far from the capital of Paris. Now, Henry knows he needs to rouse his men because they face 10,000 Frenchmen, all of them in good health, all of them ready to defend their homeland, while Henry's men are sick and tired and perhaps even dismayed with Henry himself. So this is a critical moment in the play, a real turning point. And this speech is perhaps one of the greats of all of English literature. So I'd just like to take a portion of it. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers. For he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother. Be he ne'er so vile, this day shall gentle his condition. And gentlemen in England now abed shall think themselves accursed they were not here, and hold their manhoods cheap, while Senny speaks, that fought with us upon St. Crispin's day. Now, this is part of a speech delivered to the men before they're about to go into battle. And I wanted to look at how Shakespeare uses different devices to create such an emotionally resonant and compelling and encouraging speech. So ultimately, what Henry is trying to do is persuade his men to go into battle against great odds. And he does that by using ethos, logos, and pathos. Now, ethos, this is an appeal to credibility. I mean, obviously, he's Henry, he's the king. But during this period, more times than not, it was considered that kings had a divine right to leadership, that they were chosen by God. They were answerable to nobody. Shakespeare kind of turns that on his head right here. He turns this pretty medieval convention, one that accounts for irresponsible leadership, oftentimes in history, both in the East and the West. He overturns this convention in this speech pretty powerfully. We also have logos. Logos is an appeal to logic. And finally, we have pathos. Pathos is an appeal to emotion. Now, what I wanted to show you here is that I've highlighted or underscored or made a unique color for different rhetorical tools that Shakespeare is using. They include syntactical devices like anaphora or epistrophe, right? These are tools that are, used for emphasis. We have the repetition at the beginning and end of lines for the purpose of really, again, through parallel structure, strongly reinforcing the main idea of Henry's speech. We have alliteration, also, band of brothers, that more deeply emphasizes the bond that Henry is trying to imagine exists between himself and the men he's about to lead into battle. We have Menonym, of course, sheds his blood with me, right? We can take that both to be literal, right? But also blood in relation to some greater a point about the great costs that are likely to be incurred from this battle. We have paradox, right? Be he ne'er so vile, this day shall gentle his condition. A soldier in this fight, fighting alongside Henry V, a soldier that may come from the lower classes, may himself be impoverished. Maybe he joined this campaign because he needed to make money. He was so destitute. This speech is saying the battle will transform this man into a gentleman. He will be rendered gentle. Quite amazing. And let's think about this. There's juxtaposition and irony, both at the same time, right? Speaking about layered rhetorical devices, gentlemen in England. So we are comparing the soldiers who are fighting on behalf of Henry to those who did not join the campaign. Men of title, men of wealth, men who are sitting easily in their own manors and estates, who themselves are, compared to the men fighting in the battle, they are made lower. They are held to lower esteem by Henry. And I think that this is a really important example, again, of irony and juxtaposition. And it shows how the speech that he's giving operates on multiple different levels. Now, I just identified a number of these devices. I tried to show you, what and how. But like the real question we need to answer, as I said, is why? Why? So what? Why? And this speech has some really compelling and powerful ideas and themes related to leadership and legitimacy. Henry is the son of Henry IV, a man who usurped the crown, took it illegally. And so he is wrestling with his own sense of identity, his own purpose, and he is internally conflicted about his role up until this point. But we see here that the speech has rendered Henry the legitimate king of England even before they fight in this great battle. He is their king. It's a sort of apotheosis, and it's a really paradoxical one in some extent. And this relates to another theme of hierarchy and egalitarianism. Henry doesn't become the king of England because God chose him. True, he does at one point pray to God and makes very clear that his faith, one that's been tested, is an essential part of who he is. But it's in this speech where, again, Henry recognizes the value of the men fighting beside him. He sees them not just as servants or citizens, he sees them as his own brothers. And this is wonderful because Shakespeare, if we're looking at this in through a historical lens, we're seeing a shift, right, from medieval feudalism and the pyramid of power and hierarchy that existed then to a more democratic and egalitarian system. And this in turn leads to another theme. Two themes in particular that are connected: personal and collective transformation. As I said earlier, Henry has transformed. He is the King of England before going into battle. And collective transformation, the people around him being changed, not only by words, but also experience. And it's a remarkable point about humanity that we are not to allow ourselves to be stuck in stasis, that we are not miserable and lowly creatures incapable of greatness, but that indeed transformation is possible for any of us, from those on low to those up high, and that we can work together towards some greater good in society. So the course expectations. Now, I want to make it very clear. I'm aware of the temptation for students to use artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude. They're assorted. This class will be designed to really test students' knowledge and to make sure that AI doesn't pose a significant temptation to their learning. So students will be regularly evaluated. They will have reading and rhetorical analysis quizzes, wherein they will show their ability to master certain ideas and identifications. And then they will also complete essays, some of them in class, to make sure that the work is their own and is reflective of what we've been discussing each day. Finally, I'd like to include speeches and presentations as alternative methods for students to kind of shine. I know that we have sometimes very gregarious students, and I think Shakespeare and his use of ethos, logos, and pathos, it's a great opportunity for students themselves to use these tools, to test them, to try, to fail, to succeed, to use the class as a platform to not only improve their reading and their writing, but also their speaking. And finally, this comes down to participation. It's expected that each and every student will participate. And I will work with students to accommodate whatever needs that they have. And I want students who feel uncomfortable in classes such as these, who feel overwhelmed or maybe lack confidence, I want them to feel encouraged. I want them to feel that this is a space for them to take a risk, to take a risk, and to see what they're able to come up with and to recognize the growth that they've accomplished from the beginning of the class to the end of the class. So that leads us ultimately to course outcomes, right? Ultimately, we want our students to go from concern to confidence with Shakespeare. We want them to be excited about reading Shakespeare when they are in high school, even college. And we want them to integrate into their own writing and speaking some of the amazingly compelling and persuasive and wondrously beautiful tools that Shakespeare uses in his own. So I want to thank you for your time. I really appreciated the opportunity to connect with you, and I really look forward to hopefully meeting with your son or daughter when they attend the class. And with that being said, have a wonderful day.